Hey everyone, this is Mike,
And this is Josh.
and this is Must See Before You Die.
That's
Oh,
right.
we're getting closer, Josh.
Yes,
We're definitely getting closer.
that's right.
One of these days, one of these days.
So, Mike, what movie are we talking about today?
Friday the 13th, part 2.
And also, just to let everyone know, we are doing, I think I said this before, but this is a new format for this show. So we're trying this out. Let us know in the comments what you think of this. We're keeping it shorter, and we're going to try to keep it a tighter show. So let us know what you think.
Yeah, no more 1 hour shows. We're going to try to cut it to 20, 30 minutes, probably around 30 minutes. And just say, hey, do you like it better this way or you want the long, detailed ones? But we're still going to have some fun we're going to have a lot of fun on this.
Right. No doubt. Go ahead, Mike.
All right, so we're going to first give the synopsis of the movie, and I'm just going to read it to you. The second entry in the long-running horror series focuses on a group of teenagers that are would-be counselors converging on Camp Crystal Lake for training under the tutelage of head counselor Paul. Inevitably, Paul relates the story of Jason Voorhees, a boy who drowned at the camp and whose mother murdered a group of counselors in revenge. No one takes the tale seriously until a very much alive Jason begins gruesomely eliminating people. And this movie, of course, was rated R and came out in 1981. The original came out in 1980. So only 10 months after the original came out, this one came out.
Yeah, that's a quick turnaround. But these kind of movies can be done quickly, and they did them back then very quickly.
Yeah, they were low budget films. This one had a little bit more money than the original, but yeah, a little bit low budget. And
yep. So what I want to talk, Mike, do you mind if I take the lead?
Go ahead, Josh.
Okay, so they do things a little differently in this movie. They wanted to bring Jason in, which I understand because they killed the killer off in the first one, which was a mistake by them. You know, they didn't realize at the time. They didn't know it would do anything. So they have technically two returning characters in this movie from the first movie. They both get killed off, which the crazy Ralph, I'm fine with that. You know, it's got a death curse, that guy. He could go. I don't care about him. But killing off Alice at the very beginning of the movie in a pretty gruesome way, in my opinion, just didn't do nothing for me personally. I wanted to see Alice maybe like somehow do more in this movie. I know there were behind the scene things, but personally, in my opinion, I would have liked to see Alice do more in this movie, in my opinion. Also, the beginning with the recap, get rid of it. Because people that are going to see this movie, I think that they probably wouldn't seen the first movie, in my opinion, or they saw it on VHS or Betamax back then too. You know what I mean? I mean, don't you think that? I mean, what do you feel about that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, there's speculation on things that happen behind the scenes. You know, everybody knows that Adrienne King, who played Alice, that's the main character from the first one. You know, she was stalked pretty badly, but it definitely shocked me. I remember. Let's go back and look at this. So this movie's older than you are, right, Josh?
Yeah, by 2 years.
Yeah. So for me, I was 11 years old, and I remember seeing this one again with my mother.
You saw this in the theater, Mike?
I did not see this at the theater. I did see it once it came out on this one.
Okay.
But this movie had one of the biggest scare scenes for my family watching a horror movie of all time. We'll talk about that a little later. But at the beginning here, I like the fact that the little boy is playing in the street, in the road, and you look down and see him playing in the rain. It kind of reminds me of it a little bit. But then all of a sudden you see other footsteps, start, kind of walking in the rain. I like that. The music is killer again. I love the very beginning of this. The recap, that was an 80s thing. I think every 80s movie that came out that had a part 2 or a part 3 or whatever always recapped the previous one. So for that time period for me to watch it, it was no big deal because all the other movies were doing it too. I admit it is taking way too long. It took 5 or 6 minutes to recap the whole original.
The movie
wasn't but an hour and 29 minutes to start with.
It went on and on and on, in my opinion. And I was almost close to just fast forwarding. But like you said, we talked about, we do get Jason in this film, which is really cool in my opinion. Like I said, we do have some returning characters, but they don't last long. So this movie actually, in the timeline, for whatever reason, takes place 5 years after the original movie, which I do not like that either. I don't like that. Why? Why can't you just do it? Why can't you just do it like in the timeline of the real timeline? Like it's a year later, someone doesn't really know the whole story. I mean, they know, but they don't really care about it. And they're trying to start something up because technically that's not even a camp. It's just counselors training. So like, why does that matter if it's 5 years later? Like, I don't understand that.
Yeah, the only thing I could think maybe on the reason for the writing of this movie was the police officer later in the thing says, you know, he catches a couple of the teenagers messing around trying to go over and see Camp Crystal Lake, because this was another camp beside Camp Crystal Lake. It's all supposed to be on Camp Crystal Lake, but it's a different camp setup. And
the kids in this refer to Camp Crystal Lake as Camp Blood.
Yes, Camp Blood. And the police officer said, you know, hey, we don't want to, you know, you don't even need to be on this lake. Do it somewhere else, another county over. We don't want any, you know, because it's just kind of gotten a bad rep, I guess. But yeah, that whole thing. I will say this though, I really like Jason with the bag on his head, the sack, whatever you want to call it, because yes, I love that. And let me tell you this: as a young kid, probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, the scariest movie I saw at that time period was The Town That Dreaded Sundown. And my understanding is they got Jason with the bag on his head from that movie, which was a true story that happened in Texas and Arkansas border. And that scared the daylights of me. So I personally love the Jason prior to the hockey mask with a bag on his head. I
think the bag's all right. Not my favorite at all. The hockey mask is the best to me. The bag is all right. But why only have one eye cut out? Like what's the point of that?
Well, his other side's deformed. He probably can't see out of it anyway. That happens at the end of the movie. You see his face, and it's just, you remember him jumping out of the water in the first one, which was supposed to be a dream, but his face is all, you know, his left side of his face is okay. His right side's all deformed, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
So then after all that, you meet the counselors and all that. Let's talk about the main actress. Her name in the movie is Ginny, and the main counselor guy that's kind of like her boyfriend, I guess. His name is Paul. And then you have a lot of like surrounding characters and different things. And there is a camp. Well, there's like a lot of like random camp counselors in it that I forgot about that don't die because they go to town. But there is one main camp counselor that survives. And that's that jokester guy, because he wants to stay and party longer. So he don't, the redhead guy, he doesn't end up dying.
Skinny dude.
Yeah, he doesn't end up dying. But I wrote here, after like that, I was bored to tears with the movie, to be honest. I was bored with it when all like the upplay. Now I will say I do like the POV camera shots in this, and it's done better than the first movie, in my opinion. But for the most part, I was bored with it, man, until, they started getting into the killings. Like the main killings, like everybody goes to town and like everybody's there and Jason's really stalking them. So Jason does kill a dog in this. Like mutilates it too. Totally rips the guts out and everything. So you don't see it. It's done off camera, but you see the corpse laying there. What do you think about this in between like you meeting the characters and then when you get to the final end where everybody leaves for town and then the main kids are left at the place? Mike, what do you think about that?
I think they were trying to set things up. It was definitely a slow burn. I think a great channel that you introduced me to was it Dead Meat?
Yeah.
It said it averaged around one kill for whenever. We'll talk about the kill count later on, but it averaged one every 9 minutes. So, but really most of that was towards the very end of it.
That's right.
So one thing I did like about this movie, and this shows how old I am, is I love the way the kills in this movie are staged for a later scene when somebody runs into all of them. Halloween was that way. The original Friday 13th was that way. This movie is that way. I thought it was kind of ironic. You see Jason pulling the bodies out of the, down the steps and their legs hitting the steps going down, but he's setting them all up or taking them back to the shack. There's some really cool things in this movie though that are iconic for the Jason franchise, the Friday 13th.
What are those, Mike?
One of them is the mother's head in the shack. The video games have that in it as well.
I have the mother's head over here, but I can't reach it right now.
Yeah, it's iconic. I mean, when you think of Friday the 13th, you think of Miss Voorhees and her head cut off, and I see that table in that shack with the candles lit up around it.
It's a shrine.
Huh?
It's like a shrine to her. Yeah.
Now, I did think it was kind of funny. It was kind of odd at the very beginning when Alice is killed off and she opens up the fridge and the head's in there. I was like, whoa, was Jason walking around the streets in the rain with a head underneath his arm or something?
Apparently he did.
Maybe
he put it in the head. Maybe he put it in. Maybe he took his sack off his head, put the head in there, carried it around, and just walked around.
Yeah, he's like Santa Claus carrying around a sack of heads or something.
Yep. Yeah.
I think that's iconic. The story in the movie where Paul, the camp counselor, is telling the camp story. Listen, the soundtrack for this is still so awesome.
It's good. The music's good. Yes, the music
to it. I think is it Manfredi? I can't remember his name, but whoever did the music is so great in this movie. Where the scary scenes, it's right there again. Like you said, the point of view, camera shot's awesome. Her head is iconic. I can't talk about the death scene is iconic. Coming up, we're going to talk about two death scenes I think that are, to me, iconic in the whole Friday the 13th series. And this movie, this thing took a big hit. I think if they'd have left some of the uncut stuff in this, maybe it would have made a bigger impact, because it did take a major hit because of the original Friday the 13th. People were complaining about how gory and bloody it was, and they cut a lot out of this movie.
Yes. We'll talk more about that in our next video, though, Mike.
Yes.
So I did like them showing Jason's shack. Like, this guy, built a shack. He's been living out here you didn't put it together that he actually been living out there for 20 years. No. You thought, he went right from this movie to this movie 5 years. No, this guy's been living out here for 20 years, man. I mean, and now he's just planted his revenge. Now that there's people back at this camp that his mother's dead now, he watched his mother being killed, and now he's here to take revenge for his mother. So, I like that they showed the shack. I love watching that cop run through the woods. I thought that was freaking funny.
How many times are they going to show that one scene of the water thing with the one rock in the water and you had Jason run and step on the rock and go across the water. The cop fixes his hair and then he goes and steps on the rock and runs across the water. Then at the end of the movie, they're coming back and Paul's carrying Amy Steele's, or is Amy Steele her real name? Or Julie Steele. But he's carrying her back in his arms, and they come off that same rock and water. That was kind of funny. The funniest scene I thought, though, and another channel picked up on this too, and I laughed at it. I remember laughing at it 40 years ago or 30-some years ago, was the scene of the dog, and the dog runs up to Jason's feet, and then we know what happens next. And then the very next scene is they show a hot dog on the grill.
Yeah.
That tells you right there the dog was toast.
He was cooked.
Dead. Yeah, it's cooked. It's dead. Yeah. And then the guy sits there and goes, he's really talking to the girls. Hey, who wants a hot dog? And the guy standing right there in front, he's like, I'm right here, man. He really wanted to give it to a girl.
But so I like the final girl in this, Jenny. I think she's really good in this. I know Alice is the first. I like Ginny better than Alice as a final girl, in my opinion. There was a couple things that Ginny did that I didn't quite get, like when Jason broke it. Jason was waiting in the cabin for him, and she's like, "There's someone right here." Paul was getting his butt kicked, and she didn't even go over there and try to help the dude.
No.
Like, what are you doing, Jenny? Like, no, you should have took something. Later, she fights him, breaks a chair over his back like a pro wrestler. But
she hit him with this is what bothered me with that. She had a damn chainsaw. She had a chainsaw like the Texas Man, and she cranked that thing up first time. Number one, if you're cranking up chainsaws, it's not going to crank the first crank. Number two, when she came at him, man, I'd have just ran at him, like bull rushed him and hit him with the chainsaw. She barely grazes his arm, and I'd have had to go back and watch it several times till I noticed that there was like some blood splatter there where she actually hits him in the right or left arm. I think it was right arm. But yeah, I mean, hell, I'd have took the end of that thing and just stabbed him with it, went straight into him.
Yeah. Like I said, I wrote here that I thought Jason looked pretty cool with a bag, but it's not my favorite, obviously. But it's a cool look. I like this is a NECA figure for anybody that's wondering. They do a great job, and this is very accurate to what he looked like in the movie, right, Mike?
Yeah. Now I want to know where he got his overalls at. I mean, is he going to Tractor Supply or something?
Yeah,
I mean,
and his flannel shirt.
Yeah, flannel shirt
But yeah, and I liked in this movie that Jason isn't like an unstoppable killing machine. Like the guy
he's a small guy too. He's not he's not the zombie looking at the very end. This huge 6'4".
Yeah, I mean, like Paul's
bigger than him.
Paul was struggling with him, but like he could still go toe to toe with him. I mean, I think in both cases though, Jason did get the better of Paul in both fights that they had. But he wasn't. I mean, he was falling over. He was like acting like when he got hit, he was acting like it hurt. I mean, like I like that he wasn't an unstoppable monster in this. I really did, and I like that he wasn't a big 6'5" hulking guy either. You know, and I think this franchise fell into that, and also Halloween fell into that same thing where they wanted some big football player to be a killer.
I agree.
And so yeah, I mean that's that. Yeah, I said that. I said I like the end chase scene. I thought that was well done with her.
My favorite scene, Josh, video wise, like cinema wise, is when she is in the shack. She's running. Number one, she kicks him in the nuts, which I thought was hilarious. I had to watch that over and over again.
Now, if you would have kicked Jason in the nuts in like part 7 or 8, it wouldn't have hurt him.
No, but it did in the first one. He fell down and rolled around on the ground. But when she runs in the shack and there's an open window there, and you see Jason with the bag on his head running in the background of her through the window coming, I love that scene. That's a great scene.
I love that where she's there and you see him running up. I think that is that's the scene of the movie for me, like shot wise. Like I think it's great. I do. I think that is really great. And I also love how Jenny puts on the mother's sweater and acts like and tries to make her hair and acts like her
psychologist, so she was playing the mental games with him.
Right, because probably Jason didn't mature mentally. You know, he's mentally off and stuff. So and it worked. I mean, a couple times he was like seeing through it.
When they were at the bar drinking, she brought that up. That's a scene I kind of like too. When the other two guys are kind of clowning around saying it's all a myth, and she's like, "Well, what if? What if?" Right. She kind of gives you the what if. And, is he got a mindset of a child? She said that scene in that movie is because later on she was going to do that. But that was a great scene.
I said that Paul runs in and finally Jenny does help Paul. She hits Jason. She hits Jason with his machete, like right here, and like cuts pretty deep, like about right down into him. He falls over. Her and Paul get out of there. And then all of a sudden they end up back at this cabin and they're like, oh, blah, blah. And for some reason, Jenny's sitting on a bed next to a huge window. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, man, what's that? And they go, and then the dog's still alive. So you're like, wait, we saw the dog's dead. And then all of a sudden, one last jump scare. Jason, without his bag on, jumps through the window and you don't get to see him grab her. But then she wakes up and she's strapped to a thing for paramedics, and she's like, "Where's Paul? Where's Paul?" Yeah. And no one says anything, and they just drive off. And that's the ending. What did you think of that ending sequence, Mike?
I have to admit this. I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, Josh. I think I told you earlier this, and I'm really embarrassed to say this. I kind of always thought that was the real thing, and the dog really survived it. It was another dog. And then
No.
me and my son were watching. He's like, "What happened to Paul?" And I was like, "Maybe that was a dream too." I mean, I've watched this movie probably 10 or 12 times over 40 years.
Well,
And it never really dawned on me, or maybe I just wasn't deep thinking enough to say.
Well, you also didn't think the end of the first one was a dream. You thought that was real.
Yeah, well,
right. See, that was also a dream.
The whole timeline thing messes me up and messes other people up as well.
Sure.
That's like at the very beginning. The very beginning of this one was only supposed to be when Jason kills Alice. It's only supposed to be a couple months. I don't never remember seeing that. I mean, on the phone, she's like, "Well, Mom, I'm just trying to get over things." You know, it makes sense now thinking that. It never came up and said 2 months later or anything like that.
Right. So, you thought it was. Yeah. No,
is it within the 5 year, 5 years later? And I mean, who knows? The timeline for the Friday the 13th is all screwed up.
What did you think of Jason's face reveal in this?
I thought it was pretty scary. I mean, it kind of, to me, was a good job based off the end dream of the first one. How half of it was like, he had hair, the other half he didn't. It was like deformed. And that's why I said, the one eye with the one bag, the one opening in the bag.
It's all right. I wouldn't say it's great.
You got to remember, it's 40 years ago too, though.
I know. But I don't know. To me, it's all right. He more looks just like a deranged hillbilly off of like The Hills Have Eyes or something. That's what it looks like. Yeah. So let's get to this rating, Mike. What do you?
Right. We're going to do favorite kills first.
Oh, favorite kills. Yeah. Sorry. Favorite kills first. What is your favorite kill, Mike, in this movie? And what's your least favorite kill in this movie, Mike?
My favorite kill originally, from watching it many, many times, I built this thing up in my head. And I told you this earlier, Josh, and you didn't make too many comments about it. My original favorite kill was when the young couple is in the bed together messing around, and then Jason walks in the room, he grabs the spear, and he stuck it through him. Because to me, it was a lot of imagination what really happened. And maybe at one time I saw the uncut version of this, because the uncut version was a lot gorier than this. When I watched it today, I was like, God, that was a letdown. And my son was right beside me. Is like, that was kind of cool, but it didn't show nothing, Dad, but the thing up underneath the bed and the blood. And I was like, yeah. So I originally said that was my favorite. My favorite now, though, by far, and it was always up there too, was the gentleman that was in the wheelchair that got hit with the machete in the head. That was insane. And it looks just as good today as it did 40 years ago, even with some of the movie and it just looks really good to me. Probably the one, the kill that, supposedly a kill, the least kill was, excuse my language, the hot chick. You had the guy hanging upside down. He had his throat cut on the back of the machete, which, that nobody sharpens the back of a machete. But the chick, she just turns around and I guess she saw Jason, and they never show what happened to her. So that would probably be my least favorite kill, because you don't know what really happened to her.
So I want to show you something, Mike. So, how you said he killed people with the back of the machete? On this figure, look what has blood on it. The back.
That's attention to detail by NECA.
Look at that. It's almost like, and also it looks like they almost put almost like it has a sharp edge on it. Like that was the sharp part of the machete.
Yeah, I've got two machetes and neither one of mine are sharp on that side.
Well, I know, but.
Maybe Jason did do that. Maybe he had both of them sharpened up.
But yeah, you're right. That is a really good detail by, I just realized that right when you said that. So
NECA does outstanding work, and Josh said that, and we're going to go into some series down the road, but NECA does awesome job.
So, the letdown kill is the girl, the hot chick that's killed off screen. You don't get to see. I'll give a honorable mention to Scott, the pervert dude who gets his throat cut upside down. I think that's kind of cool because he is upside down.
Mm-hmm.
And he really couldn't defend himself. And I like how his eyes look at the machete at first, like they're like cross-eyed almost. But my favorite kill is the machete to the guy. Mike is the guy in the wheelchair. And I think when that wheelchair goes down those cement steps, I think that's a real stuntman in that wheelchair. And wow, that's a tumble to go down those steps on that wheelchair.
I love at the end of that too. They do these like zoom in flash.
Yeah. Yep.
That's different and unique. I mean, I did like that. And they were right up on his face when that machete hits him in the head. I mean, it's like it looked like it was the real dude right there being hit.
Right. Okay, Mike. So what's your rating for this movie?
I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. No.
We're gonna go. How about we go for backwards machetes?
Okay. How many machetes I give this one? All right. So out of the Friday the 13th movies, this one most of the time is ranked about midway, around 5 or 6.
I don't give it that high.
That's what most critics rate it. I actually kind of like this one. I would say it's in my top 3, around 3 or 4. Okay. I'm going to give it 3 being good or average. And this movie is 40 years ago, and because of the historic significance of this movie.
Okay, Mike. Okay.
We still got 3 minutes, Josh. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. I'm giving it average.
Okay, Mike. I like that rating. I think that is a fair rating. Not my rating. I'm going to give it a 2.5.
Okay.
Mike. A little less than you. There's a lot of bull crap in this movie. I felt like there was a lot of slow periods. The acting is horrible, in my opinion, by most of the cast. In my opinion, it's horrible, except for like Jenny's good. Paul's all right. Alice is a decent actress, but a lot of like the not the main characters, like the side counselors and stuff, horrible, in my opinion. So yeah, and I do like the kills and stuff. I think some of them, like you said, some of the things in this are iconic. Telling the story by the campfire and different things like this. But yeah, I'll give it a 2.5. That's
a fair rating because I think what did we even mention what the rotten score was, or we want to save that for the next one?
Well, I can say it here.
Let's go ahead.
The rotten score from the critics is a 29%, which is pretty bad.
29?
Critics, yes, 29%. And the audience score isn't a whole lot better, Mike, 48%.
I'm in the 52% that maybe liked it. I don't know.
I think because yours is a little higher. So, but I would say I would be right there with the 29% critics, maybe a little higher, but not that it's a bad movie. I like it, and like I was talking to my wife, I said, "Hey, this is the movie that I've watched." There's one other Friday the 13th that I've seen more than this one. And that's Friday the 13th Part 3, which is the one I've watched most ever. Because I think it was always on growing up on like AMC and all this other stuff. But this one is the one I've seen the most. The one I've seen the least is the first one. I really have never, like, until we just watched it, a review on it, I've never seen it all the way through. So, yeah. So I've watched bits and parts. But this is the second one most seen. And I do enjoy watching it. But going on a rating with all these things added up, it's just not as good as I remember.
That, in my opinion, and I know we got to wrap this up, the character of Jenny, like you said earlier, she was probably one of the strongest. Her and Alice, of course, the one in number 1. But I think, I saw something a while back where Jenny's like, "Hey, I if they ever did a reunion, I'd come back."
Yeah.
One thing you see in a lot of these movies, though, and a lot of people say, "Well, the movie's sexist. It has shows nudity and this, that, and the other." Usually, the female's the one that survives. Well, so Alice was a butt kicker in the first one against Voorhees, and Jenny was the one that butt kicked.
Well, but that's the horror movie archetype, Mike, that the woman survives, the good woman, not the one having sex or the one doing drugs or drinking or whatever.
Right.
That's the one that survives, and it's usually a woman. I mean, you don't ever see usually a guy be the last to do it. So, okay, we're going to get out of here. I do want to say the next movie we're doing for January is Friday the 13th, Part 3. It is in 3D, and someone might have 3D glasses for his. You do too? I have 3D glasses to watch this one, so we'll see what happens.
All right. Y'all please like, comment, subscribe, and y'all have a good one. Bye.
Goodbye.